everyone. This is Tim Rowan. Welcome to this episode of Meet the CEO. I'm really happy to welcome back to this series Adrian Schauer, who is the founder and CEO of AlayaCare. Adrian comes to us today from, where are you, Adrian?
I'm in Montreal.
Oh, the headquarters of AlayaCare in Montreal, but you have been focused quite heavily on the US market in recent years as well. I want to make sure that people understand that this
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
this will be relevant to all of my readers.
Yeah, we've gone from the U.S. being our biggest growth market to now it being our biggest market. So
Is that right? So
correct.
things have changed a bit since we spoke on this forum 2 years ago, and I got a chance to come to visit with you at your user group meeting called Better Outcomes in October of this year. I flew up there after the NAC meeting and got a chance to meet a lot of your clients and some of your partners. And you and I sat down for a while. And as a matter of fact, while I was there, I wanted to go through some of the changes that have come to AlayaCare recently. I got a chance to speak with Andy McDonald and Isaac Alexander and Naomi Goldapple. Why don't you run through the job positions that they've branched out into, and that'll help us to talk about your plans for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So Naomi's actually been with us for a number of years. She runs Alaya Labs, which is our in-house data science and kind of forward-looking R&D group. Isaac is the chief architect here, and he joined the company 3 years ago now via the Procure acquisition. So Isaac was one of the initial developers on the Procure app. So, 25 plus years in the segment. And then Andrew McDonald is a newer addition to the team. So he joined us in the fall last year, and he came from Kinaxis, which is obviously not a home care company. They're a major supply chain software company. So he's been ramping up on the details of the home-based care industry, but brings decades of experience leading large development teams and building world-class complex products.
I also got a chance to interview your keynote speaker, April Hansen, and people who read my newsletter will remember that I wrote up the important parts of my conversation with her almost right after I was there. So one of my November issues. For those who didn't see it, I'll post a link to it at the end of this. So, Adrian, you recently published a prediction for home care for the coming year. Now, you did the same thing 2 years ago when we spoke. We talked about what's coming. I never do this. I never ask anybody to go back and ask them if their predictions are right. So let's just talk about 2023.
That's kind of you, Tim. I made a few missteps last year. Optimistic
everybody
ones.
does. Everybody does. One of my favorite movies years and years ago was Oh God, with John Denver and George Burns. And John Denver was shocked. He said, you don't know the future? And God said, I do, is the minute it becomes the past. So you're in good company, Adrian.
Yeah.
So tell us about some of the new things that you introduced at Better Outcomes. One of them was AlayaCare University, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. So, we've been in business for 8 years now, and we always viewed ourselves primarily as software craftspeople, with a view that if you build the perfect software, that will translate into customer value without much intervention. What we've discovered is that really the software is only good as the knowledge and the business processes around the software. And one way we found to really make sure that users are taking advantage of all the capabilities of the software and following best practice to get to the business value is to have self-paced learning alongside the software. And so our launch of AlayaCare University was really a persona-based way of making sure that our users know how best to use the software to accomplish their goals.
I'm coming up on 30 years since I was introduced to home care, and that has been a problem from the very beginning. People use 25% of the features
Yeah.
available in their agency management system or electronic health record.
Yeah.
So AlayaCare University is aimed at making sure they get the biggest bang for their buck.
Exactly. And because we serve home care, home health, hospice, home infusion, all sorts of different segments, it's actually not the one way to use the software. It's really how to use the software for the segment you're in, because it's a very different workflow, as you well know, scheduling nurses in a home health context versus scheduling home health aides in a home care context. So we also have contextualized the learning to the segment.
Over the years, I've written about the acquisitions that you've made. You started in private duty personal care, and through the acquisition of Delta, you were launched into the Medicare world. What has that been like? U.S. Medicare is a little bit different from the Canadian healthcare system.
It is a little bit different, in its pure focus on episodic care. And one of the interesting things about starting in Canada is that even though our home-based care is primarily publicly funded, it's delivered by private companies that look very much like your typical home health or home care agency in the U.S. The difference is here, these divisions between skilled and personal care, between episodic and long-term care, don't exist in the same way. And so an equivalent national agency in Canada will do everything from post-acute episodic care through to long-term personal care, or a mix of skilled and personal care. So yes, the regs are of course different, but the actual care that's happening for the client, for the patient, is very similar, and we've been supporting that really since day one as a company.
Oh, great. Now, recently you published your predictions for 2023 in home care, and I'm going to be publishing significant portions of that over the next few weeks. But I wonder if you could give us a rundown. There are some interesting highlights in your 5-part description, or
yeah,
5-part segments.
I'd be happy to take you through some of them.
I do, and as you go through, I want to ask you about some of the functions of your software that you mentioned in there that I'm a little less familiar with. So I'm kind of assuming that perhaps my readers will be as well. So maybe we can get into some of that detail. But yeah, you start with a global look at what's coming in home care, and then specifics. So can you tell us about this piece that you've written?
Absolutely. So the first prediction is really embedded within the context of, this is a very hard time to be in this industry, right? Well documented labor shortages, margin compression. It is a tough time to be in this business. And so one of the taglines we rolled out at Better Outcomes is that our mission in 2023 is to declare war on repetitive tasks. And this should come as no surprise to anyone, right? When you walk into the typical head office of a home-based care agency, you will see a lot of humans doing tasks that don't require discretion and don't require building or leveraging of relationships that are built. And our belief is all of those should be automated away, right? The people you have need to be building relationships with the clients as well as with the caregivers and your funders or your referral sources. That's where the high value work is, going through the same click stream 20 times a day. We are in an era of software where that should be possible, and you shouldn't have people doing repetitive tasks that don't require a relationship or discretion in decision making. So that's number one.
For example, you mentioned some of the features that you've built in to help with that. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm really curious about some of these. Everybody's by now, at least all of my readers are familiar with Element 5, your partnership with that group that has an AI system that automates tasks. But tell me, what is Alaya Connector?
Yeah. So this is, I would say, our single biggest weapon that we're bringing to this war. So AlayaConnector is a built-in enterprise service bus. So it's a no-code tool that you can use to connect all the different endpoints within the AlayaCare app, either to other systems you have or automate if-thens. So if you think about an intake and the manual steps that might happen with a new client intake, you can just go into AlayaConnector. Either our services people can do it for our customers or they can do it themselves. And you can connect up the various systems, map the data, have it flow. And then if you have specific logic, right, this type of intake needs that sort of auth check, or maybe routes to a given service office or a given desk, you can define all that logic within AlayaConnector, and then it happens with no human intervention.
So it's a connectivity tool add-on.
Correct. Yeah.
That
Connectivity
works.
tool and workflow engine where you can program specific logic.
And does that include, or is that something different from what you call schedule and route optimization?
Yeah, it's different. It's different. So schedule and route optimization is about automating, putting together all of your labor supply with all of your labor demand, right? And so you typically have a set of visits that have to happen, either one-offs or recurring visits. And then you've got your labor capacity with some availability, and coordinators take that task on themselves. Yes, with tools in their software for filtering and for sorting and some sort of prioritization. But what this does is it takes that whole approach, and the optimization engine, in a few seconds, will try millions of different combinations, rate them all, and bubble up the best ones, which either can be automatically assigned or at least ranked instead of relying solely on what's in the coordinator's head.
So this is all part of, I love the term, your war on repetitive tasks.
Yeah.
And there's another one you mentioned in your prediction piece, and this one's intriguing to me: vacant visit automation.
Yeah. So that's actually just a specific use case of schedule optimization. And again,
Okay.
you walk to the typical coordinator's desk and you look at a day in the life, and most of the morning is spent filling vacant visits, right? Maybe you had call-offs the day before or some other changes, right? And there's today quite a manual task to fill those vacant visits. So this it's actually a combination of connector and schedule automation to automatically fill those, or at least get offers out to the best fit people who could fill them.
Okay. That makes sense. So this all goes toward that goal of eliminating repetitive tasks. One of them you call a note flagger tool.
Yeah. This is I would say on the edge of repetitive task. This is really leveraging AI to deliver better health outcomes. But again, a typical thing you'll see is a lot of insight on a client or patient journey is embedded within narrative notes, right? So those could be progress notes on a visit, other forms of narrative notes, even things as simple as, the client refused this particular ADL for a given reason. So if you're a clinical supervisor, that is a mountain of narrative to get through. And what we see is, not every note gets read, and sometimes things get missed. So what this particular feature does is it uses natural language processing to have the AI read through all the narrative notes that come in. And we've trained a model to then flag the things that, if you don't intervene, could have an adverse outcome, right? Maybe it's skin deterioration, loss of appetite. It's all the things that would be very familiar to a clinician. Only what the AI does is it pulls those out, flags them, puts them on a dashboard for the clinical supervisor. And so that helps them really focus on the areas where there might be additional risk and an intervention might be required.
There's some aspects of triage, clinical triage, to focus the attention on the most important issues to be addressed.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the rest of them I'm kind of familiar with. The things like family portals have been around for a while, and risk triage. What is your data intelligence engine?
Yeah, so there are a couple of components to it. There's of course the software stack used to get at the data, and so we use Snowflake as the data warehouse and Looker as the visualization tool. But and one of the big advantages is all the data is available to our users, and they can build their own reports. I mean, yes, we'll bring
Mhm.
canned reports, but they can do it themselves, build their own reports in the software. So that's kind of the basic data stack. But then that is also owned by Naomi and Alaya Labs. And what that allows us to do is layer AI and other advanced data science tools on top of that. So, for example, our employee retention dashboard takes all that data that's in the software, but then is running a model that's been trained across millions of visits and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of caregivers to flag which caregivers might be at risk of churn, so you can make sure maybe you fill their schedule or talk to them about what might be going on. Why might their engagement be deteriorating?
The worker shortage and retention has been a particular focus of mine for the last couple of years. And
Yeah.
you mentioned the need to offer people a career path
Yeah.
through online training. Can you talk about now that I want to make sure that you clarify, because you talk about a couple of partners,
Yeah.
Nevin and Care Academy, but you also talk about your own. So how do they all work together?
Yeah. So we aren't a content company, right? We're a software company. We're not going to be the ones that are certifying and upskilling caregivers. We work with partners who specialize with that and specialize in that, and that's where the extensibility of our platform really comes to bear, right? So we've got very tight integrations with some of those partners I mentioned, and but if I step back and kind of articulate the point I'm getting at, so obviously, we would love to pay our caregivers more as an industry, but we are constrained by reimbursement levels. So, yes, we have to provide as delightful an experience as possible on the job, and we have to make sure people are rewarded and recognized in what they do. But the other thing is, the demand for caregiving is going to continue to rise. And currently, it's rising faster than we're able to mint new caregivers, whether that's through education, through schools, through immigration. We just are not going to close this labor shortage without being very proactive about it. And one of the things that makes people view their work as a career, not as a job, is if they can continue to develop and see a path in a given career. And so I think this is something our industry can do a better job of. There's some great models already out there, but we think the more we can embed continuous learning in the experience of what it means to be a home-based caregiver, the better our industry is going to do in terms of recruiting and retaining people.
And that's one of the biggest things that we're looking at. It's not doesn't appear to be getting any better in 2023. So your prediction is it's going to continue to be a challenge.
Yeah, and we can't all just compete for the same pool of caregivers and hope it's going to work out in the end. We have to invest upstream and bring people into the profession and then upskill them over time. I think that's a big part of the answer for this segment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, have you found acceptance? This is a typically um, lower paid, lower educated group of workers. Have you found acceptance for online training?
In general, yes. Um, but the other thing you have is scope of practice constraints, right? I got shouted down on a round table, primarily with RNs, suggesting that there would be a path to upskill a significant quantity of aides to an RN
Mm.
designation. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we need more granular levels. We need more delegation of tasks, more on the job training. We just are not going to have enough care workers otherwise to care for our aging population. So I think we have to be creative and we have to invest in our people, and we have to find a way to bring people along and not have everyone protect the scope of their industry. Of course, you need quality, but I think there needs to be a bit of an iteration on this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As we're recording today, you and I both are getting ready to pack up and go to Home Care 100 in Orlando, and so you can kind of predict what we will be hearing there from some of their presentations. There's been a big focus over the last few years in this movement toward hospital at home, and you deal with that in your predictions for 2023 as well. And in that, you talk a lot about the willingness of home health and home care agencies to take on risk.
Yeah.
Can you go into a little bit of detail about home care working with hospital at home?
Yeah, absolutely. The point I try and make there is that models have to change, right? If our industry stays in a pure fee-for-service model, and especially with the rise of managed care organizations looking to, in a way, commoditize the delivery of in-home care, we are going to be in a race to race into margin compression and really an unsustainable industry. Whereas it's very well accepted and very well documented that the home is one of the cheapest, safest, best, most effective places to deliver care. So I think as an industry, we have to try and step out of the constraints that have been put on us by various funding models and various ways that delivery of in-home care is reimbursed, and go and make the case sometimes further upstream to say to the health system and hospital partners in our area, hey, we know you're overflowing. We know you need to get patients out. And the two hops down, when that gets to us as an unsustainable business model, that doesn't work. Let's work directly together, and the funders will follow us if we can deliver the outcomes at a great economic cost. And I know that we can. So I think we have to be bold as an industry. And one of the great things about Home Care 100 is you've got the real big hitters in the industry that are there. And so I'm really looking forward to see how we can band together as an industry and be less order takers and more set the rules of play, because we have the scarce commodity in this industry, which is the skilled people who can deliver great care in the home, and the world needs us. So I think we have more power as an industry than often we realize.
It's come up actually at Home Care 100 and other conferences I've attended recently about the commoditization that you mentioned, especially with the growth of Medicare Advantage. Yeah. These insurance companies seem to be oriented toward giving us hours, giving us visits. And what you're advocating, I hear, is a return to a focus on outcomes. What can we do for your patient, your covered life?
Yeah.
No matter how long it takes us to do it, and how many hours, how many visits.
Yeah. And that entails taking risk, of course. But I think if we continue to sell hours, we're not going to succeed in the long term. We have to find a way to get reimbursed for the outcomes we deliver. And by the way, even for the number one problem, which is labor shortages, that's going to help, because then you're a valued part of the care team. You're not a commodity as a care worker going out and doing an hour of care here or there. So I think the secret is there. It's not going to be a straight line, but we really have to lean into this trend of taking risk and trying to get paid for outcomes. And we have to be relatively united in that, or else, as you say, the Medicare Advantage plans, as long as they can find someone who will deliver an hour of care for a low rate, it's not going to work out for our segment.
You can't take a loss and make it up in volume, in other words.
Exactly.
I should, before we run out of time, I should put you on the spot. At a couple of times, speaking of Home Care 100, where I'm looking forward to hear what your message is going to be there. But the last couple of times that I've attended, one of the guys from LHC Group, I think Bruce Greenstein, has
Yes.
come up with the just say no policy.
Yeah.
Medicare Advantage doesn't pay you enough to cover your costs. Tell them sorry, we're not in that business. What have you come talk to him or come down on one side
Yeah.
or the other or on that
Yeah.
threat of his?
I think Bruce has it right. Bruce has it right. Now, interesting to see them now be a part of a pair. So
That
it's
might change his
interesting, and
opinion,
that
you think?
trend continues. I actually don't think it's going to be as big an arrow of history as it looks like right now. I don't think ultimately the payers are going to own the in-home providers at scale. I just don't think those business models mesh that well. But I think Bruce has it right. We need to recognize the power we have and be united, or else this industry will get commodified, and we're not going to be able to make the investments we need to make to attract caregivers to the sector, and then none of it works.
So, home care, home health, hospice need to step up to the changing environment.
Yeah, that's my view.
So, we will do this again someday, but for now, I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you who have joined us on this. And as always, I look forward to hearing your feedback. You can always contact me at editor@homecaretechreport.com and let me know what you think of my Meet the CEO series. This has been a conversation with Adrian Schauer, the founder and CEO of AlayaCare. Well, Adrian, thanks again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
This is Tim Rowan. This has been Meet the CEO. I will see you next time.